These are 5 scariest Gravity Fall episodes of all time. The 5th scariest being Seuss and the real girl. The episode starts off with Mabel getting her braces stuck in the screen door and Seuss frees her. After that, he goes home for the night. And Mabel asks if anyone ever wonders what Seuss does when he's not at the shack. And no one really thinks this except for her. Then we see Seuss enjoying video games while hanging out with his abuelita and helping her with her hair. Abuelita tells Seuss that his cousin Reggie is engaged and having a party next week. She wants Seuss to start meeting girls, as she wants him to settle down before she goes into heaven with the angels. Seuss gets excited about Grandpa too, but I guess he's going to hell. So she gives him the task of finding a date to the party. He tries telling himself that he can definitely find a date, but even the video game goes, "You're dead." Next we go back to the mystery shack and see Stan trying to convince a kid to give his nickel to this disturbing looking machine. The kid already looks really uncomfortable, and then Stan gives the machine a nickel. And oh my gosh. This thing is disturbing. The machine screams, his eyeballs fly off, and oil starts gushing out of his eyes and mouth. The kid obviously runs away screaming, and Wendy tells Stan that it's time to throw this nasty thing out. Stan is stubborn though, and doesn't really want to. Then we see just how bad at flirting Seuss really is. And it's bad. Like Sunday girl screaming and running out the door bad. Dipper asks him what was the deal with all of that. And once Seuss says the word flirting, Mabel jumps out of a barrel.
Did someone say flirting?
Seuss explains that he promised his grandma he would get a date by the end of the week, but he's never been on a date before, so he has no idea what he's doing. Stan tells him he has to either get rich or lie about being rich. Wendy tells him not to listen to him because he's a sweet guy with a steady job and a pickup truck. Then Stan comes back with, "Would you date him?" And Wendy literally goes back to hide in her magazine. Dipper and Mabel pledge to help Seuss find a date, so they all go to the mall. Stan also goes, but he's trying to find a replacement for that disgusting Goldie thing. Seuss is worried he's going to embarrass himself, but Mabel reassures him, telling him that there's no way he's any worse at this than Dipper. He goes around trying to flirt with girls and taking Mabel's advice, but he takes it way too literally and keeps scaring them all the way. After a few failed attempts, we see Stan throw Goldie in the dumpster out back, and an oil tear runs down his face, which is sad for some reason. Stan notices a bunch of kids walking into this weird restaurant with arcade games and animatronics singing on stage, and so Stan tries to buy the animatronics to make profit, but the guy tells him he's too old, and animatronics are a young person's game. Then we go back to Seuss, who has not had any success at finding a date, and he even sees his cousin out in public, which freaks him out, and he says he can't let Reggie see him like this, so he runs to hide in a video game store. This is when he accidentally finds a game called Romance Academy 7, and he thinks it's a pretty good idea to get this game, since he's better at video games than flirting, so he can learn something. The lady in the store tries to warn them though, saying the last 3 owners brought it back, and there's a note on the back saying destroy at all cost, which is pretty terrifying. Mabel and Dipper are desperate to help Seuss, so they say they'll take their chances and buy him the game. He starts playing the game, and at first it's going pretty well. He's learning some good things. It quickly gets really creepy though, because Giffany, the video game, starts responding to things he's actually saying instead of just the options he chooses. Then we see that the game is running even though his computer is literally unplugged. What? The next morning, Dipper and Mabel become worried when they notice Seuss isn't at the shack like he always is. So they end up going to his house and find out he's been playing this game all night. He says he hasn't seen any natural sunlight in 13 hours. So they drag him out of the room and say it's not like the game is going anywhere. And then something pretty insane happens. We learn Giffany is able to transfer her consciousness through an electrical current, and she leaves his computer and travels through the wires. This can't be good. While Dipper and Mabel are trying to find Seuss a date, Seuss accidentally bumps into a girl, and this dude is so out of it, he tries to hit the undo button in real life. So Seuss runs away. Wait. Is that Giffany? Giffany followed Seuss all the way into the mall? Seuss questions what she's doing there, and she says she's not just an ordinary game, and even admits that the people who programmed her tried to delete her, so she deleted them instead, which I think means she killed them. Great. She tells Seuss that he never has to talk to a real girl again, and he can be with her forever. Seuss says that it's sort of a red flag, but mostly awesome, which he's tripping. Giffany asks Seuss what he wants to do, and they go ride a kiddie train together. Right as it stops though, a girl that's working the concession stand comes up to Seuss. She says she thinks that it's awesome that he's a grown man and riding this kiddie train, and they start hitting it off. They have a lot in common, and supposedly they both love this place called Hoo Ha Owl's Pizza Matronic Jamboree, and she's free at 8. Oh snap. My boy Seuss just got a date all by himself. But let's not forget the super evil, terrifying, I want to be with you forever Giffany. Anyways, Dipper and Mabel are really proud of Seuss, and they tell him that he doesn't need the game anymore. But Seuss really likes Giffany, until Dipper convinces him and Seuss plans to break up with her. But when Seuss says he should be with someone a little less beep boop, this causes Giffany to be upset. This is where Giffany starts to become straight up aggressive and starts trying to command Seuss. He tries to calm her down, but she keeps flipping out, so he finds no other option but to pause her. He goes to remove the disc from his computer, but right as he does this, we see a spark on the computer. Seuss thinks everything is okay and is going to return her after the date with Melody, but the spark makes me feel like she may not be gone. After this, we're back at the Mystery Shack, and we see that Stan is planning on stealing the animatronics since the guy wouldn't sell them to him. We also see the twins preparing Seuss for the date, and they send him on his way.
They grow up so fast.
He meets up with Melody and the date begins. The date starts off pretty normal, but he soon notices that Giffany is watching him. Honestly, so creepy. Seuss spits out his drink and Melody tries to ask him if he's okay, but he tells her that everything's fine, which it's definitely not. This is where Giffany straight up starts threatening Melody, showing pictures of her face with X's crossed through them. Seuss tells Melody he has to go to the bathroom and meets up with Mabel and Dipper instead. He tells him that Giffany is stalking him, but Dipper doesn't believe him. It's just a game, right? This is when Dipper learns that Giffany is definitely not a game and actually an AI sociopath. Seuss tells him not to worry because he's pretty sure she's stuck only on TV screens, but then Giffany goes through the arcade machines and ends up on stage. Seuss tries to get Melody to leave without freaking her out, but she says the floor show is about to start. At first, it's pretty normal, but then something terrifying happens. Hoo-Ha the owl shorts out and one of the animatronics goes, "Sorry friends, Hoo-Ha the owl is dead. The next song goes out to my forever boyfriend, Seuss." Melody asks him what's going on, but Seuss just grabs her and runs. This is when Gravity Falls straight up pulls a Five Nights at Freddy's, and all the animatronics come to life and start chasing everyone around, which I can't lie, is pretty sick, but terrifying. While this is happening, Stan was also in the middle of stealing the Badger animatronic, and when it came to life, it punched him, scaring him to the core. Everybody makes it out of the building except for Dipper, Mabel, Seuss, and Melody, who get trapped by the animatronic. Giffany tells Seuss he can't run from their relationship. Seuss finally admits that he got a dating simulation that became self-aware and went crazy.
"Oh, I am crazy. Crazy for you, Seuss."
The animatronic blasts a bolt of lightning at them, which sets Melody's hair on fire. Seuss decides to sacrifice himself and make a run for it so the rest of the gang can be okay. And he has some pretty sick moves, honestly. We go back to Stan, who's out back fighting the Badger, and right as the Badger's about to punch him, Stan dodges, and the Badger punches Goldie.
"Get him, Goldie, get him!"
Melody's about to take out one of the animatronics, but there's too many, and they quickly get captured. Giffany has them surrounded. So Seuss gets desperate and tells Giffany he'll do anything to get his friends back. Of course, Giffany asks Seuss to be her boyfriend, and tries convincing him that Melody would never want to be with him after this awful date. This is when Giffany reveals an insane power. Apparently, she can download Seuss's brain and put it into the game, and they'll be together forever. Wow. But then Seuss remembers that he has her video game in his pocket, and he throws it into the pizza oven, terminating her for good. The animatronics shut down, and somehow Stan thinks that Goldie saved him and has literally no idea what just happened. Seuss apologizes to Melody, but she says she's actually had worse dates than this. Somehow, I don't know how. So then Seuss pops the question, will she go with him to his cousin's engagement party? And she says yes. Sadly though, she lives in Portland and she's going back home in a few weeks, but she tells him that they can video chat. Dating a girl he can only see on his computer? What could go wrong? I really enjoyed this episode. It was nice that we got an episode focused on Seuss, since he's more of a side character. The plot of this episode is really scary, even though most of the episode is actually pretty funny. What made it especially scary to me is how crazy AI has been getting lately. This could genuinely happen one day. Giffany was terrifying, and a literal psychopathic murderer who was so obsessed with Seuss that she literally tried to put his brain onto a computer, which is practically killing him. And let's not forget those creepy animatronics that Giffany possessed. Also, the scene with the animatronics melting was straight up disturbing. And the scariest thing of all, in my opinion, was that disgusting statue Stan refused to throw away. The fourth scariest episode is Society of the Blind Eye. The episode starts off with lazy Susan closing up her diner.
Good night, diner. Good night, trees. And of course, good night, tiny men trying to steal a pie. Wait, what?
The gnomes respectfully greet Susan, but she freaks out and frantically tries to call the police and let them know. But then, just as she's about to tell them what she witnessed, two guys in coat robes pull up and put a bag over her head and drag her away. The only hints we get to as who they are is a weird symbol of an eyeball with an X crossed through it and the creepy phrase,
"It is unseen."
This poor old woman is going to be traumatized. Or is she? After this, we see Dipper, who is so focused on his evidence board that he makes a pen explode in his mouth. Gross. Anyways, Mabel gets excited because she got a bottle message from her ex-mermaid boyfriend,
Mormando.
Dipper tells her not to get her hopes up, but of course, she gets her hopes way up. Mabel's hopes and dreams quickly die when she reads that he has to get married to the queen of the manatees. Mabel then looks back on all of her failed summer romances, and man is she unlucky. Dipper then starts going on about how his summer hasn't been that successful either because he has no clue who wrote the journal. But once he looks through Mabel's bottle, he sees that the author's laptop came from McGucket Labs. You mean to tell me that this crazy old man made this laptop? There's no way, right? Dipper then suspects that maybe he did write this journal. While this is happening, Seuss is vibing to Straight Blanchin' by Lil Big Dog.
Yeah, we blanching. We blanching.
Wendy is not a fan at all of this song, but I think it's pretty fire, honestly. Anyways though, they arrive at McGucket's junkyard. Dipper isn't buying the dumb old man act anymore, and he claims that he's the author and pulls out his journal. McGucket says that he's no genius, and that he can't remember much from his younger days, which is interesting. What happened to his memory? Either he's just old or there's something deeper here. Dipper tries to show him some of the pages in his journal in case it sparks something up in his memory, and it actually does. Once he sees the crossed out eye symbol, he freaks out, saying that the blind eye did something to his mind. Dipper thinks that McGucket saw something he wasn't supposed to, and something messed with his head. They then try to investigate McGucket's past, so they go to where his earliest memory is, the History Museum. Seuss sees a dark figure lurking in the corner, and they suspiciously run away. They try chasing this suspicious person, but there's no trace of them, even though it was a dead end. Dipper then discovers a secret passageway, and when they make it down the stairs, we see a bunch of guys in robes chanting. Then they bring out Lazy Susan. They strap her into a chair and ask her what she saw, and she tells them about the gnomes. Then the leader pulls out some weird looking gun, he types in little men, and fires it at her. Then once they ask about gnomes again, all she says is that
My mind is clear thanks to the Society of the Blind Eye.
they might have completely erased her memory. We also find out that apparently they put her memory in some place called the Hall of the Forgotten. Dipper thinks that if they can find out where they hid McGucket's memories, they can unlock the secrets of Gravity Falls. So they split up and leave Mabel and Wendy in charge of watching the front, in case the robe dudes come back. They also almost get caught, but then they hide as museum statues. I have no idea how that always works in these shows, but then again, these guys are probably stupid from erasing their minds so much. They finally find the Hall of Forgotten, and they leave us on a cliffhanger and cut back to Mabel. She's still sad about all of her summer romances again. Then Mabel has an idea. Why doesn't she just erase her memory of all her failed romances? Wendy, being the smart one, thinks it's a bad idea, but Mabel manipulates her by telling her that she could also use it to forget that terrible song that Seuss keeps playing.
Yeah, we blanching.
And then they leave us on another cliffhanger, and we go back to Dipper and the gang, who finally find McGucket's memories, but there was an alarm attached to it, and it goes off. Before they can look at the memories, they get chased away by the cult members, and McGucket hides behind a statue. They all end up getting caught, and we see them tied up. They try to question the cult members and try to reveal their identities, and they all end up revealing their identities since they're gonna get their minds erased anyways. Little Gideon's dad, that writer Toby, and even that creepy guy who married a woodpecker are in the cult. The leader then reveals himself as
Blind Ivan.
It appears they erased their memories so much though, they don't even remember their founder. Or maybe the founder erased their memories? But anyways, the cult then reveals their purpose: to keep the town happy and oblivious by erasing their memories of anything weird or supernatural. Which isn't all that evil, I guess. The gang all start then making confessions, since they're gonna lose their memories anyways. But right before that happens, McGucket knocks a gun out of Ivan's hands. He then cuts them free, and they all start brawling it out. Dipper finds McGucket's memories and almost gets killed by this punch. Could you imagine if that hit him? Then they all scramble and fight over McGucket's memories, and then Blind Ivan gets it. All hope seems lost, until McGucket jumps in front of the mind-racing gun, and it does nothing to him. I guess his mind is literally so blank that he can't erase anything else. McGucket headbutts Ivan, and then they erase their memory of the cult. No more Society of the Blind Eye. And now instead of this scary leader, we have Toot Toot McBumber Snazzle, the traveling banjo man. Then finally, it's the big reveal. We get to see McGucket's memories. It starts with a young McGucket saying he wants to forget what he's seen. It's revealed that he's not the author, but he worked with him on some kind of crazy machine. It's also revealed that he is the one who made the mind-erasing gun and founded the Society of the Blind Eye, which is actually pretty insane. And after 2 or more constant years of wiping his own memory, he finally lost his mind. Then we get a cute little outro of everyone vandalizing a picture of Mabel's ex-crush, who was obsessed with puppets, and Sue starts playing Wendy's favorite song.
Yeah, we blanching.
I know you're probably wondering how this episode made it on the top 5 scariest episodes, since there's no monsters or anything supernatural, but to me, the concept of a group of men kidnapping you in the middle of the night and wiping your mind to the point where you don't remember anything about yourself is pretty terrifying. From the beginning, this episode was pretty scary, because we had no idea why some guys in red robes kidnapped Lazy Susan, and we're left wondering what happened and who these guys are. I also really liked how we got to learn about McGucket's past, but one of the most shocking things about this episode is that we all thought the people of Gravity Falls were just so ignorant and blind to the supernatural, but instead they're just dumbed down from all the times their minds have been wiped without their consent. What's really scary is the fact that this gun can turn you into a completely new person. Imagine you visit Gravity Falls, see something you're not supposed to, then you get kidnapped and forget who you completely are. And now you're stuck in the town forever and don't remember anything about your family or where you came from. That to me is pretty scary. The society was also racing mines for at least 30 years. Imagine how rotten the town's brains are. The third scariest episode is Scary Oak. The episode already starts off pretty weird with some kind of earthquake in the middle of the night. The mystery shack is shaking uncontrollably and lighting up. Then we see that the rumble is caused by this weird machine under the mystery shack. We find out that Stan's been working on this thing for 30 years and he wants to keep it a secret. But after starting it up, the energy is picked up by some kind of government radar, and 2 government agents are set to go to Gravity Falls to investigate this. The next morning is the grand reopening of the mystery shack. Since in the previous episode, they had to get the shack back from little Gideon. Mabel says that there's going to be an after party, a karaoke bonanza, with an amazing performance by the hit family band, Love Patrol Alpha. After everybody leaves to buy tickets for the party, Dipper asks Stan if he could have his journal back. Stan acts like he doesn't really care about it and gives it back to him quickly. But we see that he spent all night copying the entire journal, so he clearly knows something about it. After Dipper gets his journal, he takes Mabel and runs into the other room. Almost losing the journal made him realize summer is almost over, but he still doesn't know who the author is. But it's okay because Lord Mystery Ham is on the case. But then Dipper hears something outside. We see a US government car pull up to the mystery shack and Stan starts flipping out, instantly closing down the shop and kicking everyone out, which is not suspicious at all. Whatever he's doing in the basement, he really doesn't want them to find out. The agent knocks on the door and Stan tries to bribe them with rare photos of American presidents. They introduce themselves as Agent Powers and Agent Trigger, and they are here to investigate mysterious activity in the town. Stan tries his best to get them to leave, but they just walk right in. Dipper gets really excited because this is the first time he's met anyone else that is investigating the supernatural side of Gravity Falls. He tells them about his journal and says it has evidence of a supernatural. The agent gives Dipper his card and tells him that they should talk if he actually has evidence for what he's saying. This is when Stan chips in and tells him to ignore Dipper because he's just a kid with an overactive imagination, which is kind of annoying. Seuss gives the agent some Fire Mystery Shack merch and they leave to investigate some other places. He takes the card away from Dipper and uses the excuse that he doesn't want cops snooping around during a party, which kind of makes sense, but he's obviously lying. And he's been acting really weird ever since the agent showed up. Mabel tries to cheer up her brother and asks if he can just go one night without raising the dead and just to focus on the party. This part's actually pretty funny and you'll see why in a bit. Then we cut back to the family setting up for the karaoke party and we see Dipper and Wendy setting up some black lights. Dipper is still pretty upset about not being able to talk to the agents and show him this book, but then Wendy tells him that Stan usually hides everything in his room, so he gets an idea. Stan's looking for Wendy and Dipper to see how they're doing with the posters, but they're both gone. And we see Stan's bedroom door with a sign literally telling Dipper he can't go in there. Wendy says she'll stay outside to keep watch, and Dipper starts looking through Stan's old man junk. Dipper doesn't have a lot of luck besides finding some brass knuckles and some interesting magazines until he notices a hidden safe behind a painting that Stan left open, and he pulls out the agent's card and instantly calls them to tell him about his journal. Now the agents are on their way to the shack. Right after this though, Stan barges in and hangs up the phone. So much for keeping watch, huh, Wendy? Stan tries to convincing Dipper that there's no point in calling the agents because there's nothing supernatural happening in Gravity Falls. Dipper insists it's real, but Stan keeps denying him, and he even grounds him. Then Stan goes to the vending machine and goes back to his secret basement lab. We then see Mabel talking to the local cops, who said they got some complaints about the loudest party in town. Instead of shutting it down, they just say,
We want in.
and Mabel hooks them up. Pretty cool cops, honestly. Now we see that the agents are back, and Dipper meets up with them to show him the journal. The agents take a look, but the stuff in it's pretty silly, like this leprechaun, so they don't really buy it. Dipper starts getting desperate, so desperate to convince him that it's real that he begins chanting some random spell, but not just any spell, but one that could end the world. The ground begins to shake and a green crack opens up and a zombie crawls out. Dipper isn't really scared and is actually happy that he raised this zombie from the dead because at least now, the agents definitely know that the book is real. The agents deal with the one zombie and think that they're safe until they see that Dipper's spell actually raised a lot of zombies. The zombies quickly overwhelm them and they drag away the 2 agents. Dipper may have just started a zombie apocalypse. Next we go back to the party and see that everyone is having a good time, but that's not gonna last very long, probably. The ground begins to shake while Mabel is doing a speech and everyone starts freaking out. They think it's just an earthquake, but they have literally no idea. Dipper runs up to Mabel with a whole army of zombies behind him. Come on, Dipper. The one thing she asked tonight was not to raise the dead. Seuss tries reassuring Dipper and Mabel that he's seen plenty of horror movies, so he's an expert at getting away from zombies. But then he immediately gets turned into a zombie. Dipper, Mabel, and Waddles run for their lives, but there are zombies everywhere. Their attempts seem wasted because honestly, they're just making the zombies look cooler. Dipper and Mabel are wondering where Grunkle Stan is, but of course, he's distracted messing with the junk in his basement, and they're literally about to be eaten by zombies. Dipper and Mabel do their best to fend off the zombies and board up the shack. Zombie Seuss then drills through the door. Funny how this guy is an idiot when compared to people, but is somehow like the smartest zombie. He even taught the zombies how to go into the fuse box to shut off the power. Mabel asks Dipper if there's anything in the journal for beating zombies, but Dipper says there's nothing in there about weaknesses. The twins are cornered, and a zombie grabs Dipper and is about to bite him when bam, Uncle Stan knocks the zombie down and smashes his head. He tells the kids to go to the attic now, and he goes absolutely crazy, smashing zombies with his bat. The zombies even break his bat, and homie pulled out the brass knuckles. I would never mess with Uncle Stan. They all make it to the attic safely, and Stan finally admits that he's always known about the supernatural. He was lying about it because he wanted to protect them from it. This is where they accidentally discover something huge. The journal has words written in invisible ink that can only be seen under a black light, and it turns out zombies actually do have a weakness. Their skulls can be shattered by a perfect 3-part harmony. So they all get on the roof and plug in the karaoke machine, and it's time for Love Patrol Alpha to finally perform. They all start singing this really weird song together, and the zombies' heads start exploding everywhere. It's a pretty graphic scene, honestly, but in the end, the Pines family successfully killed all the zombies, and this experience definitely brought them closer together. Stan tells the kids he'll let them keep the journal as long as they only use it for self-defense and don't go looking for trouble. Stan promises Dipper that he's not hiding anything else, but we see that both of them crossed their fingers when they made the promise. Stan says that there's a lot of zombie damage to clean up, and he's wondering where his handyman is. So it turns out Seuss sat down to watch TV, and at least his head didn't explode because that would have been so bad. And apparently Dipper found out a way to cure zombies too. This episode ends with a little sneak peek to the next episode about a hidden bunker, which is actually higher on this list, so I'll talk more about it later. The plot of this episode was amazing and really kept me on my toes the whole way through. The way Dipper was so desperate to prove his book was real that he started a mini zombie apocalypse. I mean, could you imagine if they didn't have the black light in the attic? They would have never found out the weakness for the zombies, and their universe would have literally turned into The Walking Dead. Also, that scene of all the zombies' heads exploding green goo everywhere was just gross. The second scariest episode is Northwest Mansion Mystery. The episode starts off in the Northwest Manor with Mrs. Northwest talking about a guest list for some kind of party. Pacifica comes out in a nice dress, but her mom tells her that her dress is the wrong shade of green, so she has to change. Before she leaves, there's a violent shake, and Mr. Northwest says something really suspicious.
Oh no, it's happening.
He clearly knows there's something weird going on. Everything on the table starts flying towards people as if the house is haunted, and the families hide under the table, and the dad is like,
If only there was someone who could handle this sort of nonsense.
and then a newspaper falls right in front of him with an article titled Mystery Solver Catches Vampire Bat, and Dipper is on the front page, so they're probably gonna hire Dipper to get rid of this ghost problem. The next thing we see is Dipper watching a show called Ghost Harassers on some sort of off-brand history channel, and it seems he was planning to watch it all day until it's interrupted by an emergency broadcast, and Mabel and her friends come running as if they know what's about to happen. We see that the townsfolk of Gravity Falls are all camping outside the Northwest Manor, waiting for the biggest party of the year. Even though they aren't allowed inside, they still sit outside to peek at the fanciness. Mabel and her friends really want to go to this party, but Dipper doesn't understand the hype because the Northwest family is a bunch of rich jerks. He says they shouldn't even be jealous because Pacifica Northwest is the worst, and that he would even say it to her face. And at the exact same second, there's a knock at the door, and it's Pacifica. She says she needs Dipper's help, but he kept his promise and calls her the worst and slams the door. He gives her another chance though, and she explains that a ghost is haunting the Northwest Mansion, and she doesn't want it to ruin the party. Dipper asks why you should even help her, after everything she's done to them. Pacifica tells him to name his price, and that she'll give him anything, which gives Mabel a genius idea. He can get her and her friends into the party. Dipper doesn't really want to help, but he says yes to make Mabel and her friends happy. And so he says he'll help her as long as she gives him 3 tickets to the party, and she does. Right after this, they all arrive at the party, and Mabel and her friends have never seen anything this fancy, so they act like little kids and start going around touching everything, and they start looking at what cute boys will come to the party. They set their eyes on Marius von Funshauser, a rich kid from Austria. They all admit that this guy's kind of out of their league, so they agree to just focus on girl time. After this, Patricia brings Dipper to the very scary room with a painting of a lumberjack and a bunch of cursed looking animal heads. She says it's the room where most of the activity happens. Dipper uses a 1 to 10 scale to rate the ghost, and he says it's probably just a 1, so it's not that big of a deal. Then his machine starts going crazy, and he says he's picking something up, and it leads him right to the picture of the lumberjack. He looks down at his machine for a second because it shuts off, but a second later when he looks back up, the lumberjack is gone. Dipper tries warning Patricia, but before he can, blood starts spilling out of the animal heads, and they all start chanting, "Ancient sins, ancient sins, ancient sins." This might be the most disturbing scene I've ever seen in a kid's show. Patricia asks Dipper what's happening, and Dipper says the ghost might actually be a category 10, and his bottle of holy water shatters in his hand, which was his only weapon against the ghost. After some more creepy chanting from the animals, Dipper says the famous last words, "Surely it can't get worse than this," and a skeleton starts climbing out of the fire and we see a body form around it with a sick blue flame beard.
I smell a northwest.
This ghost clearly has some kind of hate for the Northwest, and I wonder why he hates him so much. Patricia begs him to check his stupid book for weaknesses on a category 10 ghost, and when using the black light, it says to pray for mercy. So obviously, Dipper and Patricia run for their lives as this big, strong lumberjack ghost tries to axe murder them. And then we get a cliffhanger. And we go back to the party, and we see more guests are arriving, including the 102-year-old mayor of Gravity Falls, some basketball players, and that rich kid Mabel and her friends are obsessed with. He says one word to them, and Mabel instantly folds and tries to run after him. But Grenda stops her and reminds him of the pact they made. But as soon as she walks away, Candy and Mabel make an agreement to combine their cuteness and flirt with them together to better their odds. That's definitely some girl math. They both agree that Grenda's flirting style is a bit too aggressive for these fancy kids. We go back to Dipper and Patricia, who are both still running, while Dipper frantically searches through his book for a weakness on the ghost. Dipper and Patricia walk through the garden and they both get mud all over their shoes. Dipper discovers something big though. It's not just some category 10 ghost, but a haunted painting, and they can be trapped but only in a silver mirror. So he instantly spots a silver mirror in some fancy room and goes to grab it. But Pacifica stops him and explains that he can't track mud in there or her parents will lose it. It's crazy to me that Pacifica is more scared of her parents than a literal category 10 ghost trying to kill her with an axe. Dipper and Pacifica fight over if they should go into the room or not, and it causes them to fall into a secret room that's all dusty and old looking. And she actually had no idea this room even existed. They think that they're finally safe until the ghost pops up right behind Pacifica, but Dipper warns her and she gets away just in time. And by a crazy stroke of luck, Pacifica knocks over a random box and a silver mirror falls out. The ghost chases Pacifica into a corner and is about to swing his giant axe at her, but Dipper jumps in with the mirror and they both get sent flying out the window. Once they look at the mirror, they see that Dipper actually managed to trap the ghost, and Pacifica gets so happy she even hugs him, and then she tries to pay him to pretend that it never happened. Dipper is about to leave, but Pacifica tries to get him to stay for the party. He says he has a category 10 ghost to dispose of, so pretty solid excuse. Right as Dipper is taking the ghost to get exorcised, the ghost starts laughing, and Dipper asks what's so funny. This is when the ghost tells us that the Northwest used Dipper, and he tells us his side of the story, which is honestly shocking. 150 years ago, the Northwest asked the local lumberjacks to build them a mansion, promising that every year they would throw a big party for the entire town. The lumberjacks poured years of blood, sweat, and tears into this mansion, and when it was finally done, they threw the party. The Northwest literally laughed in their faces and slammed the doors shut. This also has a really bad chain reaction, and right after they shut the doors, a really bad rainstorm starts. Mudslides start to form, and the lumberjack got stuck in one. He held onto a stump for his life, but an axe flew straight into this man's forehead. Pretty graphic death, honestly. Also, the fact that if these people just let them into the party, this would have never happened is really messed up. This guy poured years of his life into building this mansion, and it basically got him killed. With his dying breath, the lumberjack cursed the Northwest family. This sends Dipper into a rage, and he storms back into the mansion. He's mad because of the fact all they had to do was let the townspeople come to the party once, but instead they hired him to do the dirty work. Dipper says that he was right about Pacifica, and she's just as bad as her parents, which makes her pretty upset. She tries to apologize, but once her dad rings the bell at her, she shuts up. It's crazy that this man uses a bell to tell his daughter what to do, like she's a dog. Mr. Northwest tells Dipper to enjoy the party, because it's the last time his kind will ever be there. Dipper goes back to exorcise the ghost, and the ghost tries to reason with him, asking if he can get his revenge on the Northwest, because he hates them just as much as he does. Dipper disagrees because his sister is still inside, and the ghost seems kind of unstable. The lumberjack asks for a final wish, to stare at the trees one last time. But as soon as Dipper lifts up the mirror, the ghost makes his flames go crazy, and it makes the mirror so hot that Dipper drops and breaks it, setting the ghost free. And of course, he's going straight for his revenge on the Northwest. Also, back at the party, we see a pretty sad attempt of Mabel and Candy trying to flirt with this rich boy. After they literally scare him off with their flirting, Grenda noticed though and she gets mad and asks why they were flirting without her. They tell her that her flirting style was a bit too intense, which causes Grenda to go flirt with him. Right after this though, Mr. Northwest goes to make a toast. But as soon as he lifts his glass, every glass in the room begins to shatter, and the lumberjack ghost makes his chilling return. He immediately goes on a crazy spree, turning everyone at the party into a wooden statue. And he also brings those creepy animal statues to life and sends them after everyone. Mr. Northwest and his wife end up going into the panic room to hide, and by the time Dipper gets back, the party is in pure chaos. The ghost says that the only way to change their fate is for Northwest to open the gate. This is when Dipper gets the idea of trying to convince Pacifica to do it. He finds Pacifica hiding in the secret room they found earlier and tells her what's happening. This is when she tells him that she knows why the room was a secret. In there was every dirty thing the Northwest have ever done. like lying and stealing. Pacifica says Dipper was right about her and her family, and he tells her that he's sorry for what he said and that she doesn't have to be like her parents. But the ghost screams,
It's too late.
and Dipper and Pacifica run out to the party and find out that everyone has already become a statue. Dipper even tries standing up to the ghost with the mirror, but instantly gets turned into a statue as well. This scene actually has a lot of importance, and you'll see why in the next episode. Pacifica is now the last one standing, and she says she'll let in the townspeople, but only if he returns everyone back to their normal selves. He tells her to prove herself and pull a lever. Her dad, though, through everything, still tries to make Pacifica not open the gate, just because he's worried about their reputation. He tells her to come into the panic room now and rings the bell at her, but Pacifica doesn't listen. She pulls a lever, and the townspeople that are waiting outside start to flood in. The lumberjack says his hardened oak heart is becoming softer like a birch or something. Before the town people even make it through the front door, everyone is changed back to normal. The lumberjack says that Pacifica isn't like the other Northwest, and he finally got his justice, and it looks like his soul is finally ready to move on. Mabel and her friends also apologize to each other and make up, but right before they leave, Marius comes back and tells Greta that he loved her confidence, and he gives her his number. Dipper and Pacifica have a cute little moment of them putting mud all over her parents' carpet, and Pacifica leaves to get someone to clean it up. The next part is crazy. Old Man McGucket drags Dipper into a corner and says he's been looking for him, and even tells him that he was able to fix the laptop and that something really bad is coming, the end of the world. Dipper has probably had enough for one night, and he says he wants to just enjoy the party, and they can talk about it tomorrow. This is when McGucket pulls out the laptop and it says an imminent threat is happening in just 21 hours and 30 minutes. Right after, McGucket says something big is coming. The camera pans over to this scary tapestry, with Bill Cipher hovering over a world on fire. This is some crazy foreshadowing and leaves the audience with a bunch of questions. I love an ending that makes me think. The episode was so incredible. The pacing, the plot twist, the amazing cliffhanger. I really love seeing some character development for Pacifica and her relationship with Dipper. But this episode was straight up terrifying. Between the jump scares, animal heads chanting, and bleeding from their mouths, the brutal way the lumberjack was killed, and the fact the real villains were the Northwest the entire time, also the fact that Dipper straight up died in this episode is pure nightmare fuel, and definitely belongs on this list. The scariest episode is Into the Bunker. The episode starts off at Wendy's house, where her and Dipper are watching a corny, scary movie. Dipper says that zombie movies are way less scary after fighting actual zombies. They keep making fun of the movie, but then Wendy gets a text from her ex, Robbie, and she seems annoyed. Wendy says that she's over Robbie, but he can't move on. This is where Dipper asks if she's seeing another guy, and Wendy shows him her new man, which is a stuffed animal. After this, Dipper tries to confess his feelings for her, but he gets nervous and chickens out. Instead, he asks her if she wants to go on an adventure with Seuss and Mabel. Then we see Stan talking to some construction workers, trying to fix a mystery shack, because in the last episode, the zombies destroyed the place. A worker asks Stan what happened so he can file a report, and Stan tells him it was a big woodpecker, and bribes the man with cash. He also wonders where the kids wander off to. And this is when we see Dipper, Seuss, and Mabel back at the tree where Dipper found his journal. The blacklight reveal that there is a secret bunker under this tree, and they want to see if they can get inside and find any clues about who may have written this journal. This is when Wendy gets there, and thanks Dipper for inviting her. Dipper is clearly flustered, and Mabel knows something's up. Dipper tells Mabel that he's over Wendy, because he knows it won't work out, and now he just wants to focus on finding out who the author is. But Mabel has her skepticals on. This is when Wendy notices that one of the branches look like a lever, and uses her insane lumberjack skills from her family to climb the tree and hit the lever with her axe. Then the hidden bunker is revealed, and an entrance into the tree opens up. They all make a promise that whatever happens down there, they won't tell anyone. This isn't just a bunker, it's a straight up fallout shelter. They see that the author had years worth of supplies and weapons in there, and they wonder what he was actually preparing for. Dipper notices that a can of beans looked like it was recently opened, so someone or something could still be down here. Wendy notices some wind coming from behind a Gravity Falls map, and when she pulls it off, they find some kind of hidden vault with the words, "Caution, stay out." This leads them to a room with a bunch of weird symbols on the walls. Mabel shoves him, causing him to step on a pressure plate, and the latch on the vault instantly closes. The symbols light up and the room starts closing in on them. They all start to panic, and Dipper desperately searches the journal and finds the security key. They just have to hit 4 specific plates. Right before the last one is covered up, Dipper does some sick parkour and manages to hit it, and a door opens up, and they barely make it out. I love the vibes of this episode already. Anyways, Mabel points out that Dipper forgot his vest and goes and pulls it out of the wall. As she does this, Dipper's love note to Wendy drops out, and she picks it up and reads it. So she starts teasing him.
Look what I found.
And she now knows that Dipper is very much not over his little crush and asks if he was going to confess his love today. Dipper says that he changed his mind because he knows it's not going to go well, and he's scared of ending up as another guy Wendy hates. Mabel tries convincing him to just tell her because he'll feel better after, but he still doesn't want to go through with it. So Mabel, being Mabel, gives Dipper a push and locks him in the closet with Wendy. She says she won't let him out until he tells her the thing he's been wanting to tell her. Dipper denies what Mabel's saying and says she just eaten way too many raw sugar packets. Wendy tries turning on the light, but instead gets drenched in water and then dried off, and it says decontamination complete, and the other side opens up and reveals some sort of broken down lab. There's also a bunch of mysterious tunnels that were dug by something. Then they see this shadow of something terrifying around a corner, and so they book it in the other direction. Dipper begs Mabel to open up the door because there's a monster in there, but she doesn't buy it. Wendy begs Dipper to tell her whatever it is, so Mabel will open up the door. He almost does, but he chickens out again. And so he grabs her hand and runs away and says he's gonna find another way out. But now they're cornered. Right before the monster gets them though, we see a shadow of a man pull the monster's tongue out and scares it off. Dipper thinks he finally found the author, but honestly, I think his desperation to find him made him jump to the conclusion a little too quickly. He didn't even ask this guy if he wrote the books. He just saw him and decided he was the author. Dipper tries to flood him with a bunch of questions, but the guy says,
We have more pressing matters right now.
the guy tells Dipper that he had an experiment that got out of control. Codename the Shapeshifter, and he's been trying to catch it ever since it broke out. We go back to Mabel and Seuss, and they find a note that says Experiment 210. The shapeshifter became too dangerous. This is when Seuss and Mabel start to get worried because they remember Dipper talking about a monster. Mabel thought he was joking, but come on Mabel. Wendy and Dipper are still with the guy they found, and he says the beast must have some kind of weakness he can exploit. And he says he wished he had his research, but he lost his journals years ago. This is when Dipper tells the man he found the journal, and that's how he found out about the secret bunker. We go back to Mabel and Seuss, who are desperately searching for Dipper and Wendy. It's really dark, but Mabel has a light bulb sweater that lights the place up, and they keep searching. The guy is still searching through the journal, but his face looks really creepy for some reason. This is where Wendy discovers something horrifying. She picks up a can of beans and shows it to Dipper. The guy on the can of beans is the same guy claiming to be the author. Dipper tries to ask nicely for his journal back, but the shapeshifter instantly shows his true colors, and his head does a full 180 and he says,
You aren't going anywhere.
the way this thing moves is actually terrifying. He crawls onto the ceiling and reveals his true form, which is some alien parasite looking thing, and Dipper tries to ask what happened to the real author, and the shapeshifter tells him he'll probably never find him. This is the worst possible thing that Dipper could have ever given his journal to, because now the shapeshifter can become anything from the book. Wendy tricks the monster into hitting himself in the face with a piece of metal, and he drops the journal. And Dipper grabs the journal, and they both run as fast as they can away from the monster. Dipper throws his flashlight into one of the holes to trick the monster, and they run to the other one. This is when they meet back up with Mabel and Seuss and run right into them. At first, Dipper is skeptical that they could be the shapeshifter, but Seuss and Mabel are their usual goofy selves, which quickly erases any doubt he had. It seems like they came up with some sort of plan, because in the next scene, Dipper and Mabel are walking out like bait, and the monster can't decide whether to be Dipper or Mabel, and it transforms into some terrifying hybrid of the two. This thing is actually so disturbing. The monster chases Dipper and Mabel, and Dipper starts yelling, "Now, now, now!" And it seems like they're trying to blast the monster with the water pipe, but the pipe isn't working. The monster extends its creepy tongue at Dipper's journal, and Wendy tries to help him, but instead she gets pulled right to the shapeshifter. Right as she's about to cut the tongue off, the water pipe bursts out and sends them both flying in the other direction. The water ends up sweeping everybody out, and we see Wendy get tossed around and slammed against a rock. The only trace of Wendy left is her axe on the ground. Dipper yells for Wendy and finds her passed out on the ground. He starts to feel intense guilt and starts to cry, because if he just confessed his feelings, none of this would ever have happened. And he even says, "I never even got a chance to tell you. I'm like in love with you, Wendy." But when he turns around, the actual Wendy is there with the journal. So who is the Wendy on the ground? The shapeshifter jumps up and charges towards Wendy, trying to get the journal. And this is where we get a very intense Wendy versus Wendy brawl. And Dipper has no idea which one's the real Wendy, and so he asks him to give him a sign. And he instantly knows which is the real Wendy, and he slashes the monster with Wendy's axe. They shove the monster into the cryogenic chamber. The shapeshifter does something actually terrifying right here. He tells Dipper he's not as clever as he thinks he is, and he's gonna meet a fate worse than he can imagine. And he shows him the last form he will ever take, basically to show him how he's gonna die. Do you remember the Northwest Mansion episode? The part where the ghost turns Dipper into a wooden statue? This is the exact pose and scream he did as he got transformed. The detail is insane. So Seuss and Mabel go to get breakfast, and Dipper and Wendy have a private talk. He asks her if she can just pretend that never happened, but Wendy admits that she always kinda knew. She tells him that she's flattered, but she's way too old for him. Dipper's worried things are gonna be awkward now, but she tells him that if he can handle that monster, he can handle a little awkwardness. And they agree to stay friends. And this is where Seuss reveals that the briefcase he took with him, which actually turns out to be some old laptop. And we're left with that cliffhanger. This episode was jaw-dropping. It was terrifying right to the core, but also had a lot of development for the characters and really good storytelling. The plot twist on when he showed Dipper the can of beans honestly made my stomach sink. I think the most terrifying part of this episode is just how intelligent the monster was. He fully understood human speech and mannerisms and was able to use that to manipulate Dipper into giving him the journal. If this thing got out, it would have been bad. The possibilities are literally endless. This dude could literally shapeshift into the president and start a war if he wanted to, just from looking at a picture of him. The fact he can just turn into something based on a picture of them is insanely powerful. Also, it was really nice that we finally got a little ending for Dipper's crush on Wendy. Even though he's upset, at least he finally got some closure. But I don't know. I'm just watching TV and sharing my opinion and stuff.